Hello, welcome to another episode of Professional Book Girl. My name is Kayla and I read a ton of books that I can recommend the best to you. And I just have one thing to say. Bravo, bravo, fucking bravo. This is the first ever, who knows if we'll do more. This is the Bravo episode, which I kind of can't believe I haven't done yet. When I was coming up with the idea for this show, I was just imagining that I would be talking about Bravo in the opening segment of every episode, and that has not happened really. So I was thinking, like, I have so many thoughts on the shows that are airing right now. And I was like, oh, I'm going to like the next episode, that'll be the intro segment. And then I was like, do you know what? It is just like, let's make this a whole Bravo spectacular. That is what's happening here. So I'm going to be talking all about Bravo. If you are not a Bravo fan, like, that's fine. You don't have to listen. The book reviews, some of them will probably still be relevant to you. You can skip ahead to them. You can always skip ahead if you don't like what I'm talking about in the beginning. That is just a PSA. Before we get into all of the world of Bravo, though, book club is coming up. It is on May 30th, which is this Thursday. So keep an eye out for that. We are talking about Funny Story by Emily Henry. You have until tomorrow, May 28th, to get your thoughts to me. So if you are listening to this right now on Memorial Day, happy Memorial Day, and you realize you forgot to send them, like, immediately send them right now. We will wait and I will include them in the episode. I can't wait to release that one. I told you guys when I talked about when I announced that it was the book club pick, but I read it before I even announced it was the pick, which I had never done before. And I feel like I've just like, I kind of didn't like that because I've been waiting to just like get all of my thoughts out for you guys. You know, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Just can't wait for you guys to listen to that episode, which will be out on Thursday. So where to begin about Bravo? I could talk about Bravo. I could have a Bravo podcast, honestly. You guys are lucky. For you guys, I chose books as my main lane. But I started watching Bravo as a child. So I remember when Real Housewives of Orange County aired. They were the first Housewives show. And my mom hadn't watched it yet. But my best friend growing up, her mom was very into reality TV, like Real World. MTV was always on. That's where I watched like Flavor of Love, Rock of Love, like all those things that my mom just like was not paying attention to. So it was never on in my house. I would watch it at my friend's house. And I remember when she was watching Real Housewives of Orange County, and I was so intrigued immediately because I talked about this like on the internet in the past, but I grew up like reading the tabloids. Like my mom would get People Magazine and In Touch Magazine every single week, and I would just devour them end to end, which just says so much about who I am now as an adult. And there were these ads on that, it would be like the back cover, and it was like the first season women of Real Houses of Orange County, and maybe going into the second season too. And it was kind of like a game board is what the ad looked like. And I was just so intrigued, like just seeing a photo, like it was just a photo of the women, but I was like, what is this show? And I was like, I wanted to know. So then at my friend's house, her mom was watching it, and we would sit and watch with her, and that was really it for me. That was my gateway. I was like a casual watcher from like 11 until 14. And then when I was a freshman in high school, Real Housewives of New Jersey aired, and my friend group, like the 5 of us, were obsessed. Like we would like leave quotes on each other's Facebook walls every week with like quotes from the episode, like is bitch better, and we were obsessed with the Manzos and the Ham Game and all of that. And then around this time my mom was watching Jersey, and then she started watching New York, and then it kind of became like Bravo was just always on in my household then. And then I was really, most of my friends fell off. Like I watched it all through high school, and it was like a thing my friends and I did. And then even through college, I like still made it a point. And at this point I was watching most of the Housewives. I was watching Vanderpump Rules. I was a day one from Vanderpump Rules person. And then it wasn't until COVID hit that I fully like transformed into how I am now. But I just to like give it perspective, I was still so into it. Like I was a Bravo girl even before the pandemic, because I went to the first BravoCon in New York City, which was before the pandemic. So like I've always been in it, like literally my whole life. And then during COVID though, suddenly I was working from home, and it was easier to have to like get through shows and have shows on in the background. And that is really when I took it up to the next level. And I now watch all of the Housewives. I binged Southern Charm from the beginning. I had not been watching Southern Charm at that point. I did Summer House, which is now my favorite show, which is just so crazy. I wasn't watching it from the beginning. And then I did Shots of Sunset, which like RIP, they canceled it right after I got up, but I love that show so much. I think it's on Peacock or like weirdly Netflix, I think. I highly recommend Shots of Sunset. And like I said, I literally watch every single Housewife City. The one, Bravo, I don't do Top Chef. I don't do Project Runway. I watched that when I was like in high school, and I don't do Below Deck, which I know is controversial. I feel like it's going to happen eventually. It's just because there are so many like different spin-offs and it just seems very daunting to me. But I will eventually become a Below Deck girl. Maybe that will be my summer show because my current binge is Gossip Girl and I'm almost done with that. But so that's kind of like my journey with watching, how I came to be at this point where I watch pretty much every single show on Bravo. And I love it because there's always something on. So like I used to always say it's not like when I was first into Housewives, this is when I was also still into like I was watching Grey's Anatomy weekly, like Gossip Girl and Vampire Diaries were still on. I had like a lot more like weekly TV shows, but I would always say like with Bravo, it's so nice because it's on all year round. Like you always have a show through all the seasons. And weirdly, if my Bravo girls listening know this, we just had the first ever like few week lull where there were no Housewives airing, and it was very strange, but also I'm watching other shows on the network, so I still had shows going on. So right now I have a show on Sunday night, I have two shows on Tuesday night, and I have a show on Thursday night, but there are points in the year where I have a show on literally at least one show on every single night, Sunday through Thursday, which is so overwhelming, but I kind of love it because I love having something to look forward to every night for work. And that is how Bravo and having programming on every night is how I got into the routine of not binging shows and only watching like an hour or 2 hours of TV a day. I don't count when I have a show running in the background when I'm working. That's just like background noise. I'm not actually sitting and focusing on it. And it's helped me have so much more time for reading at night. So, for example, Monday, I didn't have any shows on. So, after work, I just read. And actually, when I was eating dinner, I watched one of the shows from Sunday night because I don't love Sunday night TV. I prefer to just like still be like kind of like winding down, especially if I had a busy day on that Sunday. But then Tuesday night, which that's tonight and the time I'm recording this, from 8 to 10:30, I will be watching Bravo. I have Vanderpump Rules, and then I have The Valley, and then I will watch What Happens Live, which I always watch it if I've been sitting and watching Bravo. Like I won't watch What Happens Live on a night I didn't have a show on. And then Thursday is Summer House, which is my favorite right now, and I have 5,001 thoughts we're going to get into. But I wanted to also talk about like how being a Bravo viewer has evolved, and it's become so much more of like an identity because of the way it's evolved in the shows and the way the shows have changed. So I always get asked, where should you start if you want to start watching Bravo? I think if you want to start a show, like a non-housewife show, Vanderpump Rules and Summer House and like Southern Charm, but like Vanderpump Rules and Summer House specifically. Summer House, I'm a purist, so I would say start with season 1, but you can skip to season 3. It took them a bit to find their footing, and now it is literally my favorite show on Bravo. But those are like really good gateways. I know after Scandal, so many people started watching Vanderpump, which like very excited for all of you. But like for people like me that have been in the trenches for a literal decade because that broke on season 10, like that was like our moment. Like I know I'm like probably offending someone, but like we were in the trenches listening to Good as Gold like in real time. And yeah, anyway, but so with Housewives, and this goes into how the network and the shows have evolved, I always say like Orange County is the one that started it all, and that's a great place. I like if you're gonna get into it, you need to watch them all. But Roni, which is Real Housewives of New York, the old one because there is a new cast. Old Roni is my all-time favorite. I can rewatch those seasons with like when it was like Carol, Dorinda, all of them over and over and over again. It brings me so much comfort. I love those crazy women. I love watching them just like be insane. I probably quote Roni more than any other one. I just like they raised me. I mean, all the housewives raised me literally, because I've been watching since I was 11, but I love old Roni. And I know that when people start it from the beginning, it is like very much, it feels like a different show, especially for the first like 5 to 6 years, I would say, for the ones like New York, Orange County, Atlanta, which I watched Atlanta from the beginning in 2020. And oh my God, the early Atlanta seasons are like the best early seasons, but it feels very different. Like the camera quality is different and it's a bit harder, I think, for people to get into, but it is so, so worth it if you stick with it. And then I'm just going to finish this thought quickly before I get into why I was talking about that. But if you want to start Housewives and you want it to be more modern, I would recommend Salt Lake City, which is like my favorite of the like current Housewives. There's only 4 seasons, so it's like easy to jump in and it's like the more modern approach to Housewives. And then you can watch the Miami reboot. I watched all of Miami because obviously I did, but you can just jump in with the reboot, which was just on Peacock, but now it's also airing on Bravo. But talking about how Housewives and things have evolved, it's really interesting because back in the day, like it wasn't really a thing on social media, and like they would write blogs on bravotv.com, which I obviously would read after I got home from school every day. But it has become like being a Bravo girl has become a full-time job. Like there's always like every day I feel like there's breaking news, and like there's so many moments of my when you think about like big like news moments that you remember where you were, so many of them are Bravo related for me. Like I remember where I was when Carl and Lindsay's engagement. I remember where I was with Scandal. I like all of like any big firing. I remember I was when Dorinda got fired and I was so upset or put on pause, if you know, you know. But it's become like the way that it has evolved, like social media plays such a huge part in it. And like from following these Bravo accounts, that's how I would get into like, oh, I should start this one. And just ended up to where I am now watching every single one. So I could go through my thoughts on all the Bravo shows. I'm not going to do that though. I'm going to talk about the 5 that are currently airing. And I know you're probably thinking 5 is a lot, but I have more to say about some than others. So first off, starting off strong, Summer House, my favorite. This is a weird one for me to watch because I'm from Long Island. Like I places that I go to on Summer House, and it was the same with Roni. Not really in New York because especially old Roni, it was just like such a different type of New Yorker than the life that I live. But they talk about places like Dockers, like they talk about these places out east that I'm like, yeah, like I know what those places are, which is just like kind of bizarre to watch. But I love Summer House so much since the second I started watching it. And this season is so insane. So I have never really been a fan of Lindsay. She's always just bothered me. I honestly, there's no one on Summer House, and there never has been, where I've been like, oh, I love them. Like even I guess I would say like Paige is my favorite, but it wasn't until recently that I really started to like her. Like I've just never been obsessed with any of them. But never really was into Lindsay, and I hated Carl until when he got sober and we saw him kind of like go on this journey, and he did change, or did he? Because the way he is acting right now. So when they got together again, I was like, okay, like good for them, but I wasn't like, oh my God, like I'm so happy that Carl and Lindsay are together. And I wasn't, and I didn't hate it though. I was just like, after seeing Carl go through everything he went through with his sobriety and with his brother's death, it was like, okay, like now maybe they can be happy together. Lindsay seemed really happy. And then last year when the news of the engagement broke, it broke that the engagement was broken off. I was like, I'm not shocked that they broke up, but I was shocked at what we were hearing about the way that it went down. That they'd finished filming for the season. Carl had called the cameras back. I saw on Instagram that Lindsay had just had her bridal shower, which we've now already seen on the show. And they're just like, this is wild. And then the way that everyone was talking about it, and they were like, you just wait until you watch the season. I could not wait to see how it all played out. In the early episodes of the season, I was team Carl, which I feel like a lot of us were. Like when Lindsay was saying, like, are you sober? Like that was insane. But the way he has been treating her since, like he is so manipulative. That conversation with his parents, and then how he was like freaking out about his, like he just doesn't know how to communicate, like specifically with Lindsay, and it's so insane. And I totally agree with her that like he needs a job, and they're kind of dancing around this fact that like the show is their job, but the show doesn't last forever. And I think she is very smart and practical about like needing to have things lined up for when Bravo is out of your life. And he just like, we have seen this from him though his whole time on the show. Like he'd been fired and laid off from his job in sales, and like he clearly can't hold down a job. And so I don't blame her for wanting her partner she's about to marry, this guy, to like have a steady idea. The amount of money they spent on a career coach for him to not even be into anything is insane. Him wanting to open up like a sober sports bar in New York City. I'm a sober person that lives in New York City. So cool. But also like that's like the hardest industry to get into. And I don't even know how, like New York is such like an alcohol driven city. Like I don't know how well that would perform. But like the way he speaks to her lately, week over week, is insane to watch. When he drove off with her suitcase, like infuriating. So it's not okay for Lindsay to need space for a few hours, but when he didn't want to come in on a Friday night, that was okay. Like just make it make sense. And then the Kyle and Amanda of it all, like just watching Kyle and Carl try to comfort each other, I was like, you fucking morons. Like they are both just idiots. Amanda needs to, I like Amanda and Kyle like separately, I would say, but like I just feel bad for her in her marriage. Like I don't know why she puts up with what she puts up with. And I know we're only seeing like a little bit of it, but the way he talks about her, the way that he treats her. So like what is it? Loverboy's gonna fail without her, or Loverboy doesn't need her? Like I don't understand it. I didn't really love the way that Ciara was talking to Amanda, like about her not having her own identity. It felt a little bit mean, but I think she needed to hear that. And then I liked the way that Paige and Ciara really stood up for their friend with Kyle. Yeah, it is so good right now. And I actually kind of can't believe that I'm team Lindsay. Like I assumed that I would be team Carl in this, but watching the way it played out, and I'm not sure if I believe that he knew he was going to end it and that's why he's like sprinkling these breadcrumbs. I think he's just like not a good guy, and this is just how he acts and behaves and treats women. And I think myself included, like we had blinders on after the loss of his brother and his sobriety journey, and then it's like, oh wait, no, like he's shown us who he is and now he's doing that again. And like fuck him, team Lindsay. Also, wait, last thing, what the hell happened to Danielle? Like, did she have a lobotomy? Because her performance on Winter House was so embarrassing. If I were her, I'd be like, I can never be on TV again. And then she's doubling down, and the way she's behaving this season is crazy. Like, she is unhinged, and you know it. You can tell because she's agreeing with Kyle and Carl with everything that's going on. Like, that is not a girl's girl. That is not a good friend. She is like just being psychotic founder CEO. And that is all I have to say on Summer House. Real Housewives of New Jersey. Oh my God. I get so excited the second Jersey comes back, and then I get stressed out immediately. We are, at the time of this recording, we are 3 episodes in. I'm not stressed yet. Honestly, I think because Melissa and Teresa aren't speaking to each other. So I'm like team no one with that, but I don't like Teresa. So when I first watched Jersey as it aired and I was 14, I was so team Teresa, and then things started changing and I was like, she has just gotten like, to me, she's insufferable to watch. Like I don't really enjoy, like the last few weeks she's actually been okay because like she hasn't been arguing with anyone, but I don't like watching her. I don't like the way she fights, I guess is how I would say it. Like she is just so annoying to me. I think she is so stupid and she does not understand, like the whole analogy thing with Jackie was just like so hard to watch because she's so annoying. um Actually, sorry, no, I said that wrong. When I watched Jersey when it was on, I was team Melissa. And then when I rewatched the early seasons in COVID, I saw a lot of it more from Teresa's side. And then that made me having that kind of like those adult eyes on the situation. And then just seeing everything play out now, like I don't even love Melissa. I would say in the fight between the two of them, I'm team Melissa over Teresa because like Teresa's arguments just don't make sense. And Louis is like scary. Like get away from him. I had hope after I had respect for Teresa for the first time after she left Joe, which like then why am I like excited to see Joe on FaceTime on last week's episode? Like, I don't know. He's a criminal and he ruined his family's life. But the whole immigration thing is very sad. And I feel so bad for those girls and like the daughters. I'm glad that they seem smart and have like great head on their shoulders. Like just is insane given their parents and the life that they've had. And I was like very upset, like watching when they got to see him in Italy again. That was just so sad. Anyway, if Teresa went on to marry like a normal nice guy, I probably could have been swayed to team Teresa, but of course she chooses like another scary scumbag who I would say is probably scarier than Juicy Joe. I'm not a fan of Joe Gorga either. Like I'm really not into the Judices or the Gorgas, but if I had to choose, I would be team Gorga. I think it's just sad, and I feel like people who watch it and it not to make things about the royals, but the same thing with like the royal family with like Harry and Meghan leaving and William and Harry not talking. People who haven't dealt with family breakups like really don't fully understand how sad this is, and like I can relate to the kids in the situation. Like my mom is one of six, and I never knew. I just met one of my aunts for the first time a few years ago. I just met a bunch of my cousins for the first time in February at my uncle's wake, and it was very weird and strange and uncomfortable. And like I know what it's like when like a family is broken up, and it's a multi-generational thing, and it's very sad. So like watching these breakups happen in real time is like it's not entertaining anymore. This is devastating. Like if Nono was still here, he'd be making his octopus at 7 a.m. Like devastated that his children just don't speak. Like it's just sad. So I'm glad to see them like not even interacting, because we know it would just be a fight. I'm interested to see how the rest of the season goes with like these shifting alliances. I like Rachel Fuda. I don't like her husband. Like he's trying too hard to be a housewife. And like I know in Jersey the men are more involved than other cities, but like it's enough. It's giving like early seasons PK. Speaking of which, Dream PK separated, crazy. But yeah, so it's too early to really tell, but excited to see where it goes. Really quickly, I watched Summer House Martha's Vineyard. I liked the second season more than the first one, and I liked the first one. I'm excited to see what they do after this season. I think it needs a cast shakeup. I think all of the guys except for Amir are so boring, and I know everyone loves Jordan, and she was on Winter House too, but she didn't really give anything this season. So I feel like they will keep her because she's kind of become like a name for Bravo, I guess, but I'm excited to see what they do with it next season, and I really like it. Vanderpump Rules, I don't even know if I want to fully get into it. Like obviously fuck Tom Sandoval, like Sheena and Lala just being like insane, and I wish Ariana had watched the full season, because like watching her at this reunion is crazy since she doesn't even really know what everybody was doing and saying behind her back. The Joe of it all was so weird. Like I agree with Katie. I'm happy the sandwich shop finally opened. I kind of understand how the rest of the cast was like, it's our job to film with him because it is their job. And like on Housewives, that's what you would say on Housewives. When people try to like ice a member of a Housewives cast out, it usually doesn't go well, because it is your job to show up and film with these people. So I get it for Vanderpump Rules, but I obviously Ariana is allowed to never speak to him again. Like them trying to force her to be with him was absolutely insane. I feel like the show's not over, because they said that they were taking the summer off, which like Housewives do that all the time. It gives the show like a nice little refresh, and especially for this season we just watched, they went right into that from after cameras picked up again after Scandal broke. So like I feel like they do deserve a little bit of a break. Obviously the way that the finale episode was edited made it seem like it was fully over, but it's still pulling in numbers, and now they have all these new viewers people who like jumped on the train after Scandal. So I would be shocked if it leaves. Lastly, transitioning into the Valley, I am really enjoying the show. The drama is just like insane. Nothing really major crazy to report. I kind of like the mix of having people we know, catching up with them, Jackson, Brittany, and Kristen, and then new people. I'm really into this Michelle and what's his name, Jason thing. And I feel bad for Jason, because it seems like he wants to make it work, and it seems like his wife hates him. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the shows that are currently ending. Always happy to elaborate, talk more. Maybe we can make it like a monthly Bravo recap if you guys want that. So the books for this episode are kind of, I feel like Bravo themed isn't really the right word. Two of them are directly Bravo related books, and then the third one is a reality TV book. So two of them are nonfiction, like crazy. No one fall out of your chair. I'm talking about two nonfiction books on this episode. The something I have a gripe with publishing industry. There are no good reality TV books that aren't about a dating show. And like I will always pick up, I don't watch The Bachelor. I've never been into The Bachelor. I watched one season because my roommate's watching it, and I was like, and it was Tayshia's season, and I was like, this is literally a waste of my life. And I watched a little bit of Matt's season because my roommate at the time like had worked with him. So she was like, oh, like I know this guy, like we should watch it. And I watched a few episodes, and I was like, I'm like wasting my life watching the show. Like it's just never been for me. I usually, when I worked in an office and all the girls would talk about it, I would be like, oh wait, just film me on the drama. And even now my mom watches it. So if I see that there's something crazy happening in the news about Bachelor Nation, I'll just ask my mom to explain it to me. But the only like good reality TV novels are like dating show ones, which I love Love Island. So like I'm all for that, and like I love that trope, but like we need like fictionalized housewife. Like I want like fictionalized like Bravo versions. And there is The Favorite Sister by Jessica Knoll, which considered talking about it on this episode, but I read it so long ago that I feel like I wouldn't be able to give like a really great review of it, but like we need more. Okay, the first book is by Mr. Andy Cohen himself, The Daddy Diaries. So Andy Cohen has a bunch of books. I read his first one. I think it's called The Andy Cohen Diaries when I was in high school, actually. And if you like, obviously loving Bravo, like comes like I love Andy. He's on my list of celebrities that I would love to meet. I met so many celebrities. There are like my top three that I need to meet: Taylor Swift, obviously, Andy Cohen, and Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton. Like, just those are my three that I'm like holding out to run into the street. And I want to run into Andy, but I feel like he might be rude. But then I feel like I'd be having the true experience. But like, he's like the mayor of the West Village. Like, I never go to the West Village, so that's probably why I haven't bumped into him. But I need to meet Andy anyway. If you're like me and you love Andy, I highly recommend his first book because he kind of like gives his life story, and I think it goes into like beginning years at Bravo, but I really enjoyed learning about how he got into his career. He was told he should never be a personality, and like look at him now, one of the longest running shows on late night, the first openly gay host on late night. Like, a Watch What Happens Live just does not get the critical acclaim that it deserves. Andy is such an amazing interviewer, and that's part of why I watch the show every week, because I love when regular celebrities on too, not even just Bravo people, because he asks questions that nobody else will ask. And I love I just love him. Like, I'm just such a fan. So the Diaries books are like literally what it sounds like. Like, he has a diary entry for every single day of the year. And this one, The Daddy Diaries, came out last summer, and it opens up on New Year's Day, the day after his infamous rant about de Blasio on CNN New Year's Eve show. So it was so funny how it starts, and like just not following in pop culture and in the news. Like, we saw the debacle that came out of that. Will they be allowed to drink again the next year? Like, then they weren't, and then they did. But he wakes up and he's like, I think I like said stuff about de Blasio last night, and then his phone starts blowing up and it becomes a huge thing, and you see that play out. But there's really not like too much for me to say about this book, because you're literally just with Andy for a full year, and it really felt like you were hanging out with him. If you follow him on Instagram and you like on his Instagram stories when he shares snippets of his day and like specifically with his kids, that's what you get in this book. Like, it really felt like you're spending time with him, getting to know him like he's your friend. He talks about his kids, Menace the Menace. That stuff was so cute. He talks about housewives things, like he'll be like, oh, a housewife texted me today. He talks about going to reunions. It's just like really fun, and it was fun to read about. This took place like the year prior from when I was reading it. So if you were to pick it up now, it would be things that had happened 2 years ago. And it was like a fun reminder of things happening in the world and in pop culture and in Bravo. And he'd talk about a recent Bravo event. And then like even with his kids, and he would talk about things that you would see on his Instagram story, like everything with Ben. And he's just so funny. I really loved this. My mom read this last summer. She read it before me, and I was so annoyed I gave it to her first, because she's a slower reader than I am, but she also like didn't want it to end, so she really took her time. But I was like, no, like I need to read this book. It's a really fun read. I feel like it would be great on audio. I did this in the summer, like just at the pool over a few days, and it's just like light, fun, kind of like gossipy. Just like really highly recommend. And if you want like to learn more about Andy, I recommend his earlier books as well. I actually have only read that first one and this one, so I need to kind of go back through his other books and just like fill in the gaps, because I'm just obsessed with Andy Cohen. I gave that 4 stars. That is The Daddy Diaries by Andy Cohen. Next up is probably the Housewives oral history. It is Not All Diamonds and Rosé by Dave Quinn. So there are a bunch of books out there about the Housewives. There's one called The Housewives by Brian Moylan. I obviously have read that one as well. That one wasn't sanctioned by Bravo. So people, current cast members were not allowed to interview for it. And no one from Bravo, like working at Bravo, gave any interviews or things like that. So that one, I like go into it with a grain of salt. He kind of goes behind the scenes a bit and talks about like kind of more like production type things, which I'm really interested in. But everything in that book that he mentioned, like I had learned at BravoCon at the producer panels, which I forgot to say this in the beginning. I went to the first 2 BravoCons, the 2 in New York. I didn't go to Vegas, and now they're taking a year off. I don't know if I need to go to Vegas like ever. but I maybe would go for BravoCon because it is so much fun. It's like the happiest place on earth, and like so much drama happens at BravoCon. The second year I went, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City panel literally turned into a reunion, to the point where they didn't even have a panel at the last one in Vegas because they hadn't filmed their reunion yet. And like, it was just so crazy. And I love how then on the shows they would talk about BravoCon. Like, I'm just a huge fan of BravoCon. I've had so much fun both times that I've gone. And every time I went, I would like make sure I went to the producer panels because they just really break down the shows. And if you're someone like me who's not just casually interested in Bravo, it's just really interesting information. So that book, The Housewives, kind of talks about things like that, like who pays for cash trips. Spoiler, the network does. Things like that. Not All Diamonds and Rosé is an oral history of the Housewives. So it goes through city by city. It covers every housewife city except for Salt Lake, because the time this book came out when the first season was coming out, so they just weren't able to. But I need like another book for them to include Salt Lake, because I freaking like, I'm obsessed with Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Lisa Barlow, baby gorgeous, my queen. And because this one is Bravo approved, like it's literally, Andy Cohen has like a publishing imprint, and like it's through his publishing imprint, everyone was allowed to talk. And it didn't make it though that they were like sucking up to Andy or the network. Like Candace from Potomac talks shit about Andy in the book, which like zero surprise there. It goes through, it's set up like each section is a housewife city, and then each wife, current, like probably not current from now because the book came out a few years ago, but housewives who were on the show at the time that the book came out, housewives from the beginning, previous ones, they would talk about the history and their experience on the show, and they would give like behind the scenes and give tidbits of like big events that happened. Like Vicky talking about Little Family Van, and in Potomac they talking about like Drag Me Monique and all of that stuff. It was so cool. I didn't do this on audio, and I feel like I it wouldn't be from all the cast members, but I feel like it would be a good audiobook as well. Maybe for a reread, I'll do it as one of my monthly audiobooks, because if you are into Housewives, like more than a casual viewer, you need to read this book, because it's a lot of it was like a fun refresher, but then it felt like bonus material to the shows. And it's at the point where like the housewives are fighting within the book and they don't realize. Like the number one example that I remember is in the Jersey section. It's a big fight in Jersey. Did Teresa know that Melissa was joining the show? And they still like debate that in the book. Like they each give their side of it, and they're like, the way that it's laid out, it's like they're going back and forth in the book, which is just really funny. And like they all were like, housewives were true to themselves. I'm pretty sure there's tidbits from Andy, from producers. It was like a fun refresher of housewives history, Bravo history, and then interesting new insights, things that we didn't realize about the behind the scenes of it. When this book came out, it was when social media, it has to be like 3 years old now. And social media was still a big part of the show, but it was before every housewife had a podcast, and we weren't really getting behind the scene tidbits from the women. So I'll think back like through history, like Teresa's table flip, she wasn't on a podcast the next day talking about what she was thinking in that moment. But in this book, she is. So it's cool to get insights on all of those housewives history moments. And it's just like, it is so good. Like to me, this is like the Bravo Bible. Like I love it so much. I want a sequel. I want like the more of the material that didn't make it into the book, and I want them to do this for other shows. Like I feel like they could do like Pump Rule, Summer House, Southern Charm, Shaw's, like in one book, because I would love to hear the same type of thing, that like the same type of perspectives and insights about the other shows too. I gave this 5 stars. It sits on my favorite shelf, just like so good. If you are a Bravo fan and you're a reader, you 1,000,000% need to read this book. Final book is what I was like word salading trying to describe in the beginning of the episode. This is The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. At the time of recording, actually my favorite Christina, I was going to say it's my favorite. My favorite is The Honeymooners and then this one, but I'm going to be reading The Paradise Problem soon, and I've heard people are obsessed with it, so let's see where it lands. But I read this last summer. I couldn't put it down. I was smiling. I was crying. I was so fucking obsessed. When I picked it up, I didn't realize it was going to be about a reality show. So that was just like an extra bonus for me. This is the second in a little romance universe by Christina Lauren, who, by the way, if you're not familiar, Christina Lauren, it's a author duo. They write really great romance books. I had read The Honeymooners by them as a book club pick like back in 2018 when I literally read no romance books, and it like I was so obsessed with that book. And actually, fun fact, it's related to Bravo. I pictured the main guy, I feel like his name is Ethan. I pictured Craig as him. So, because I think Craig is so cute, obviously. So it was just like really fun. For that reason, and it relates to Bravo. But if you're not reading Christina Lauren books, they're really, really great. This one is so good. But like I was saying, there's a little romance universe for this world within their books. I didn't read the first one. I don't think you need to, because spoiler, I gave this book 5 stars and I hadn't read the first one of the thing. So this is about a dating show, but it's really about like the behind the scenes, and it still will scratch that Bravo reality show book itch. It's just a bit different, like I said, because it's more of like a bachelor type show. But I think because so much of it is focused on behind the scenes, I got more of a Bravo vibe. So the main girl, her name is Felicity, but she goes by Fizzy, which I just, fun fact, I love that. My American Girl, Felicity. And yeah, I know I say it differently than other people. I've been made fun of on podcast past for how I pronounce Felicity, but that is how I pronounce it. Okay. Anyway, she goes by Fizzy, so it's fine. She is a romance novelist, and she's written a bunch of books, but she writes this, like, in the opening scene of the book, she's giving a commencement address, and it really hits her that she's not happy. At the same time, there is our main guy, his name is Connor, and he's a documentary filmmaker, and he's a single father. And this was the book that made me realize that, like, maybe I love reading about single dads in romance books. And I was like, oh, I'm getting older, I guess. Like, that's why I would be attracted to a single dad, maybe. But his relationship with his daughter, and then like concurrently Fizzy's relationship with the daughter, was just so sweet and wholesome. And I really loved reading about it. But he's a documentary filmmaker, like boring stuff, right? And there's a lot of like stuff going on where he works, and basically his boss is like, you're either fired or you make this reality TV show. And he has a mutual friend with Fizzy. So it somehow gets to the point where Fizzy is going to be the girl, like the bachelorette, say, on this world. And I really loved how she had her say and gave her own spin, and she like gave them all the different like romance archetypes for the guys she wanted casted. So like golden retriever, cinnamon roll, like grumpy, sunshine. Like imagine like all of that, because she's a romance author. So like that, the romance book genre was really infused into this dating show. Like I was like, I would be obsessed with this show. And as they start making the show together, obviously producer and star of the show get very close. And because they are so close, because she's so close with the producer, that's where we really see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And as she's like the primary on the show, so we get to like see what her thought process throughout as they're filming the show, which I loved reading about them filming the show, about the dates and all of that. Then when they would like have watch parties when the show was coming out. But you can guess where this is going. They fall in love, and she then is grasping with the fact that she's in love with the producer of her show, but she has to choose a winner for this dating show that she's on. And I don't want to say anything else to spoil it, but it is such a fun ride. If you have made it this far on this Bravo themed episode, you will love this, because it is just like reality TV gold. Like if the way it played out in this book happened in real life, it would have been like Scandival, but like good. Like that level hype and cultural interest, just like so good, so sweet. I loved it so much. I couldn't put it down. I remember I read it last summer in like a day at the pool, and it's like a perfect summery read. So new game on this show as we go into summer. How many times can I say it's a perfect summer read? But I love this so much. I highly recommend. Obsessed. I gave it 5 stars. That is The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. So to end out this episode, I'm just gonna give a few Bravo quick recs. So the other Andy books, I read Kyle Richards' book in high school. Like there is nothing groundbreaking there, but if you want to read that, I read Make It Nice, which was Dorinda's book, because on my old podcast, we got to interview her, which was the coolest thing in my entire life. And I really liked that book. I liked learning more about her life before Housewives. Dorinda's one of my favorite housewives, but she has had such an interesting life, even before she was married to Richard, when she lived in London, and she had a run-in with a serial killer, and she had this sweater line, and Princess Diana was buying her sweaters, and then everything with Richard, and then on the Housewives, and love it. My number one recommendation though is What Remains by one of my favorite housewives of all time, Carol Radswell. She wrote this book before she was a housewife. If you like writer girl, if you watched Roni, you know, but this is a memoir about her life with her husband and his ultimate death. and he was JFK Jr.'s first cousin. So her mother-in-law was Lee Roosevelt, who was Jackie Kennedy's sister, and her and her husband met working at CBS News or ABC News, one of them. We learn about Carol's early life, her career in journalism, which I really, really loved, her marriage, dealing with her husband's diagnosis, and then ultimately his death. And if you watch the show, you know that she was also best friends with JFK Jr. and Carolyn, and they died like the day after or right before her husband did. So it's very, very tragic, but it is a beautiful, beautiful story. And the book was written a while ago, like a while before she was even on Housewives. So it was very special to read it and know that she would have this very full and happy second act. And I love her and I miss her on my TV every day. And I just it is such a great book. Highly, highly recommend that one. If you're going to read any book from this episode, honestly, you should read What Remains. And I was going to do a full review, but it's like sad. So I decided I would just talk about it at the end. But that is our show. Thank you so much for listening. Book club is on Thursday. So if you haven't yet, very quickly pick up Funny Story by Emily Henry. It's a quick read. I was obsessed with it. If you were listening that this came out, I hope you enjoy your Memorial Day off for all my Americans. What do I usually say here? I say it so fast that it's like I don't even process what I'm saying. Please make sure you're following, subscribe to every podcast platform you are listening on. Leave a rating and review. It would make me very happy. If you are inspired to pick up any of the books that I mentioned in this episode, please do so through my bookshop.org page, which is linked in the show notes and in my bio on Instagram. It just gives me a little bit of money. Follow me on Instagram. I care about the show. I'm a professional book girl, and I will see you on Thursday for our Funny Story Book Club.